back. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.
And we're back. This is Boomer Life on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton and joined in studio today by Jim Doyle, Senior Financial Consultant with Investors Group. Now, Jim, before the break, we were chatting and you raised something that seems so simple on the surface, but could actually turn into a real headache. And that was the topic of joint ownership, whether we're talking about joint investments or real estate or the family business.
You know, Joanna, I get it. People just want simple. But sometimes simple turns into downright horrible outcomes. I think this is why it's so essential to work with your professional advisors. But they can't help if they don't know about the difficulties going on in the family or the purpose behind plans.
So what are some examples of the problems associated with family business or some of the challenges that they could run into?
Well, I think with family businesses, some of the structures that you might have in place with any other company, you don't treat your family members like employees. There's the question of hiring consultants, and there's a significant fear that they're not going to get your business or understand your business. And at the end of the day, how do you bring your other professional advisors in to help to get the best outcomes?
And what about the topic of everybody in the family business, if they all really want to be in the family business?
Oh, man, I just wish families could have some of these conversations.
So I guess this is where some of your additional education and designations would come in handy. I understand that you are on the Certified Advisory Registry for Advisors with CAFE, and CAFE is the Canadian Association of Family Enterprise. Can you tell us what they do?
Listen, I really love this organization because I think they've got a great mandate. What they're trying to do is to allow the business owners to gain the experiences by talking to other business owners. They try and put up a wall so that the advisors aren't there at the table. And that when the business member gets a chance to talk to another business member, say, what did you do? What did your problem look like? There's a learning process that you can't find anywhere else.
Would they be like a mediator in a way?
Well, I think they have practice advisory groups where there's an opportunity for people to talk out their issues. And dare I say it, there's not a lot of places you can go to get advice like this.
So tell us about one of the stories that you heard when you first joined CAFE.
Well, I think this is something that I've heard a few times, okay? When I first joined a cafe, one of the stories that I kept hearing were how a lot of the business owners, they were very entrepreneurial in their nature, and, that's why they decided to get into business, okay? And as their businesses grew, they decided that they needed to recognize bringing in other professional advisors, working with the lawyers, working with the accountants, okay? Working on some of those governance structures, things that we never want to talk about, okay? And as they brought more and more of these professionals into their situation, they started to see that their professional advisors were making decisions for them. And what the business owners were saying is, Jim, when did I abdicate my decision-making responsibilities?
Oh, okay. They lost control. Or they felt they lost control.
Absolutely. So they said, what I really want is I want these professional advisors to educate me to the point where I can make some great decisions. And then I want to tell the professional advisors how it is that I'm going to engage them. That's the way that I want to practice.
Okay. Well, it could be difficult for business owners to find the resources to help them plan their way to a better future.
I think a lot of business owners are reluctant to hire consultants because they don't feel the consultants are going to get their business. Okay, and I see this time and time again. One tip that I can offer that I think that would be a big benefit to business owners is to set up their own business advisory board.
Now, I understand you're not a consultant, but as part of your planning practice, you take a whole picture perspective about the family business, and that includes the owners and the business family.
I think a lot of business owners take real value from having someone like me in their team because we can help them explore issues that don't necessarily play a financial role or a significant role in the decisions that they need to make.
Well, a lot of business owners can't afford to hire anybody else, so how could they use a business advisory board?
The real value of an advisory board is the accountability. If you own a business, chances are you're not accountable to anybody. Well, except maybe your lenders.
And yourself.
Yeah. So how the advisory board helps is that it brings the focus back onto issues that often get put on the back burner, things that we don't want to address now.
Like that business plan you're always talking about?
Oh, my favorite words. Yeah, I like that idea. But I also like the idea of talking about a succession plan, developing the leadership of the skills.
Yep, that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, I like that idea. But I also like the idea of talking about a succession plan, developing the leadership skills of the kids if they're eventually going to be groomed to take over the business. An advisory board can have a significant impact on the success of the business in areas like innovation, risk management, vision, and here's the sweet one, profitability.
It's all about the bottom line. So who should actually be on this advisory board?
Key thought here, choose your members well. The process is going to need to be well orchestrated with an understanding of the distinctive roles its members will play. The best advice frequently comes from outside the company and outside their circle of friends and family. The members of the board will need to challenge the owner. They're not going to have any real decision-making capability. This isn't about selecting people who will nod in agreement with your ideas or longtime colleagues who know you and your business well. It's about getting their expertise in front of you to better direct and guide the company for the future growth. There's a lot of things that we haven't covered here, but I think it helps get the conversation started.
Isn't one of the biggest problems with business owners getting them to just basically find time to take action on things? What do you say to these types of business owners?
How about if I talk to them about their pocketbooks? Advisory boards can boost profits.
They can't afford not to find the time. So do you think advisory boards would be helpful when talking about items like the pitfalls of joint ownership that you touched on earlier?
Joanne, I'm not sure they would raise it, but I really like a multidisciplinary approach to solving problems. It's important to talk to your tax and legal people before you start down a particular path. Had I had a chance to chat with the family, one of the other problems we often see is that the kids don't want to be joint owners on a property or a business for that matter, and that means selling. This can also be a big issue when we talk about inheriting either a property or a business. For some families, this can mean an unintended tax consequence without sufficient time to plan for it, or it can create animosity as one of the siblings is forced to buy out the other sibling's interest in the property or the business. And getting financing can represent a hardship.
Well, it sounds like what we're talking about comes down to good planning, better planning, tax and estate planning.
In an effort to be fair, we often see this outcome, never really anticipating problems or the needs to do things differently in the future. When well-intentioned parents have never spoken to their kids about estate planning wishes, the kids are often left to sort it out. Another good example is where there's a family business involved, and say there are 3 kids, and each of the kids is named as a 1/3 owner.
Well, I know this from my own experience that we had this exact situation happen, except we were 5 kids and 3 were named shareholders. Well, it got a little complicated when the president of the company died, which was my dad. But we worked it out. You know, it takes time. We should have had the conversation earlier.
I think a lot of families share your perspective. It's difficult for families to talk about money, and it's equally difficult for families to talk about the family business. Parents can be expert procrastinators when it comes to getting their estate planning documents in order, and they're even worse communicating their wishes to those they'll leave behind. We've seen the chaos that this creates, and the resulting infighting and resentment, and often the business can be a casualty of the process.
I know you have a lot of experience around dealing with family businesses. Could you offer 2 quick tips to our listeners?
First, talk to your family about your plans. If this isn't easy for you, or you're not sure where to start, call me, and I'd be happy to offer a few ideas to help facilitate the family discussion. My second tip, because things change, is ensure your will allows your executor to have some flexibility with regards to post-mortem estate planning. If it's not put into the will, this is one of those things in hindsight somebody's going to wish that had been considered ahead of time.
And you're suggesting talk about whatever the plan would be, whether it's a plan to hand the business down to another family member or sell it or fold it. You've talked about divorce on a couple of our shows. So when it comes to family businesses and divorce, what are some of the specific issues that could come up?
A surprising detail we often see is that the potential for discord is all the greater when second marriages and the family business are involved.
So you mean it's all about the money?
Well, it's definitely an eye-opening experience. For families in conflict, there's a fair amount of help available, but for family businesses, not so much. It would be nice if there were more resources available. It's rarely talked about how divorce affects the family business.
There are so many moving parts here when families and businesses are combined. It makes for a very interesting mix.
I think one of the challenges comes from the fact that there are so many moving parts. It's not just the couple. It could be their family members, if they have family members employed. You've got lenders, you've got suppliers, maybe landlords or employees, all asking about questions about what do their futures look like. For many families, the family business is the means for creating their retirement plan.
Well, I get a sense that what we call retirement, or the way we look at retirement, is just completely changing.
I think one of the bigger trends that we're starting to see is that more women who are retiring from their job and starting a second career by starting a business. I think for a number of retirees, the definition of what it means to be retired is changing. And for a lot of business owners, the majority of their wealth is tied up in their businesses. And one of the key questions is, how do I extract that value?
You know, Jim, I think that our listeners might like to hear a whole show completely dedicated to women and their investment and financial planning needs. And maybe we could plan that for the future.
I do believe that the issues that affect women and their finances are unique, and their financial planning needs are likely going to be different than the challenges facing men in some ways. In fact, I think I'd love to talk more about this subject, and I think I'll do that on a future show.
So bringing it back to family business, how are they affected by the changing face of retirement?
I think we could talk for hours on this subject. Sometimes the parents' values and the kids' values align when we talk about their plans for the family business. That's kind of rare. But it's not uncommon that we have competing agendas, depending on whether we're talking to the parents or we're talking to the kids. Mom and dad might want to harvest from the business to pay for their retirement, but the kids might want to use the business resources to grow the business. Certainly sets the stage for some conflict. When I work with family businesses, this is a discussion that can take a bit of planning.
As you've mentioned before, a lot of families aren't great at communicating around sensitive family dynamics, and it is a hard conversation to have, especially when money and emotions are involved.
I think we're going to see more of this. Today, we're seeing a larger number of retirees choosing to work in retirement who want to set up their own businesses when they retire. Because people are living longer, they're living full lives in retirement. So we might be talking about a stage in life that could last up to 20 years or more.
Well, Jim, you've mentioned just how important you feel it is to work with the other professional advisors, whether that's the accountant or the lawyer or the stakeholders. Don't most advisors practice this way?
First thing I want to say is that there's a lot of professionals out there doing some great work. They focus intently on their area of practice. However, their comfort level goes down when issues arise around conflict, family dynamics within the family business. It really helps if all of the advisors are on the same page of the playbook. And I think the real value comes from helping the business owner bring the professionals to the table to help resolve problems, even when they're not in my wheelhouse, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. So this is what you mean when you refer to yourself as a financial concierge, and this is where all your designations would come in handy as well.
It sure is. I can't know everything, and that's why it's so essential for me to have a great network of professionals out there. For the professionals that do advise business families, I take my hat off to those who engage in deeper conversations with family business stakeholders, not just the owners, and look beyond the process, but also look at content.
It sounds like it's really important to understand that all of the best planning in the world gets lost if it's not implemented. I really like the idea of using an advisory board and using your professional advisors for the maximum benefit of the business and the family. You're listening to Boomer Life on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton, and our conversation today is with Jim Doyle, Senior Financial Consultant with Investors Group. When we come back, we'll look at whether or not the worry surrounding your investing habits is misplaced or well-placed, not to mention the importance of having a written financial plan. That's next on Boomer Life on CL 650. And if you'd like to learn more about Jim Doyle and how he helps financially comfortable Canadians, go to his website, jimdoyle.ca, or you can call him directly at 604-682-5431. We'll be right back.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.